So I would like to wrap up that question to get into more of the concrete second question of what can we actually do to work together and get some ideas of forging some alliances between our sectors and our levels. And it is about now taking the next step. How can the different players, including the governments, the UN, the NGOs, politicians, and the evaluation communities, act together to support the 2015 International Year of Evaluation at the global, regional, and national level. So with that, maybe we'll start with Natalia first, because we ended with you last, and ladies first this time.
Okay, and I guess I represent a group that's already doing something. Actually, the idea of declaring 2015 a year of an evaluator came from Eval Partners. Actually, the first time I heard it was from Tessie Katsambas. I think the first time I met her in 2012. So, and I'm really it shows that the dream of one person can become the dream of many people, and it spreads and inspires. That's the value of inspiring idea, that it suddenly creates a movement and everybody feels that it's great and wants to contribute to that. So there's already a movement called, initiative, we're still not quite sure how to call it. It's called Eval Partners. And I was born in the Soviet Union, and there was a saying that, like the communist one coming from Marx, that proletarians of all countries unite. So for me, when I think about Eval Partners, it's really evaluation, people who care for evaluation unite, and I think it's really great initiative because it says this is the opportunity 2015. It's an important landmark, and we are open and invite everybody to contribute somehow to promotion of evaluation as a profession and as a profession that contributes to the betterment of the world. And I guess everybody can do just a little bit, doesn't have to be much. I think it's like Deborah talking to a taxi driver to some extent, but I think it's also talking to people in different venues you meet, because we have different professional encounters, we work in organizations. And I think the first thing, it's really about kind of being an advocate for our profession to the people with whom you talk, because I oftentimes experience, especially when I go to the States for AA conference, people on the border, they ask me what I'm coming from. And then I'm saying, I'm coming for evaluation conference. And they're saying, evaluation of what? So I guess we can say that we've changed the world a little bit if after 2015, if you say I'm doing evaluation, a person, at least like every 1 in 10 people would be saying evaluation, yes, I've heard what it is, it's really good. So I guess that's the year 2015 gives us an opportunity and probably a reminder that we need to advocate for our profession and try to explain it in a lay language, because it's more and more understood that evaluation is not only about like getting the results and doing the analysis, but it's also about communicating the results and communicating our profession. So let's start practicing and explaining ourselves to the world. Let's instead of looking inward and trying to keep our distance, let's start reaching out. But also, the evaluation associations around the world are already planning activities, and I believe many of you are members of evaluation societies and associations. So when you go to your next conference, national or regional look, there are probably already the events, sessions about the year of evaluation. So I encourage you to get involved with that. And also, I would really appreciate that you spread the information within the UN system that is happening. And, it's a little bit of a pain for me, because I also am very active in a regional association, and I talk to people in national associations. And unfortunately, oftentimes I hear that people working in UN agencies are not interested in coming to the conferences of national and regional evaluation associations because they think that the quality of the discussion is not that good. And I guess they miss opportunity of joining in the professional conversation and growing, but also they miss the opportunity to educate others and build capacities. So I kind of encouraging and asking you to kind of encourage colleagues in the regions, just kind of pay more attention to that. And this can be kind of an important change during the year 2015. Yeah.
Ms. Koseleva, is it too early to talk about any event that Eval Partners might be sponsoring in 2015?
Well, I think that's probably a little bit early. Well, okay, I can talk about ideas that's not concrete. Basically, I think we really see it as a lot of events, and we're encouraging people to do events, and I think most likely we are going to launch the website so people can really see what other people are doing, so to kind of have it coordinated and have it very open and information rich. So you can really see what's happening everywhere. And then idea is to have some kind of a wrap-up event closer to the end of 2015 to kind of sum up and come together and just analyze what has been done and also discuss what should be done next. Oh, but I guess at this stage that's
Could I ask you one other small follow-up? It strikes me that an international organization at these days in this age of social media would really be using social media. So does the IOC and Eval Partners, are you using these tools in productive ways? Have you tried that?
Yes, we're using them, but I really think we should be using them more. Okay. And we're exploring this now, and I'm really trying to think that we should do more of crowdsourcing platforms and just kind of to create this space where people can share and communicate. But that's coming. So we are in kind of like a planning stage. So really, if you have some ideas and would like to join, you're really welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Thomas, would you like to comment? Okay. Yes, you're next.
I feel bad that whichever we go, you will be in the middle. Okay, thank you. In the brief moments, if I could just take the moment to pay tribute to the questions raised earlier, in that it's frustrating that, it's a good problem that we are running out of time rather than have too much time and not know what to say. But those questions are very, very relevant to the bigger issue. But at the outset, let me just say that the complexity that people rightly pointed out, one in terms of the partnerships, which is this question, more players. I mean, previously, if you had 10 donors in a small country, now we have 30 to 35, and so it's a very complex partnership situation. That doesn't mean that this is mutually exclusive with what Deborah said at the beginning, which is keep it simple, because there is merit in keeping it simple too. So the important thing is, what are the critical dots that must be connected to be meaningful? So if you miss that in the interest of being simple, you're certainly going to be irrelevant. But that doesn't mean we load the agenda with all relationships and all partnerships as well that burden the agenda. So I hope we can be pragmatic on that. On the question at hand right now, I think in working with others, the practical issue is any organization, agency has a particular niche or even an agenda that they would be good at, and so they cannot do everything. And yet the development outcome, whether it's poverty reduction, improvement in people's quality of life, they are multifaceted, right? I mean, they're holistic, and so they don't come from just building roads. But we can't do them all, and therefore you connect the dots in terms of the people you work with, at least in a given area. So in the Pacific Islands, we did an evaluation, and we found that one organization was building roads fairly well. Another one was building capacity, and they were totally in different areas, and the two didn't speak to each other. So the capacity to deliver the follow-up on the roads were missing, and so the sustainability was missing. Things like that really oblige us to forge partnerships, the critical ones. And so connecting dots across agencies turn out to be critical. Now, when we think about that, there are obviously some constraints, the time it takes to talk to people, everything takes away from the time from doing and so on. So one question, if I could just take the example of natural disasters again, here is, a wealth of information now on exercises that went well and those that didn't, or from everywhere from India and Pakistan to Indonesia to Vietnam. You have a rich body of information. So there was an earlier question, do we ever let everyone know what worked and what didn't work? I think it's an excellent question. But from that, one thing is there could be differences in the substance. What do we drive in an emergency situation? In an emergency, one attitude would be, it's such an emergency, let's just get going and just get it done. Another attitude would be, well, even in emergency rooms, in fact, especially in emergency rooms, there are more protocols because you need to follow up. So if you don't keep a tab of what injections you gave, you are in great trouble after the weekend. So you need to be even more careful in an emergency. So how do we on substance come together? Without that, partnerships will be just a word. We would be working at loggerheads. Lots and lots of examples from natural disasters. But then successes and failures, you can take Yolanda, you can take Haiti, you can take the tsunami, and the political leadership and the political issues surrounding it come up as a big issue that would determine partnerships and working together. And then the third would be the processes, procedures, and the capacity to deliver. Obviously, they either constrain or promote. So in all of this, I think we have some opportunities in forging partnerships and connecting the dots, and also some real constraints. So the 2015 agenda, people rightly said, does look more complicated. Climate change is just a multifaceted thing. Inequality is a multifaceted thing. Governance, and if those really weigh down welfare of the people, you got to address them with simplicity, but working with the others becomes then all the more important. So challenge, yes, but if you understand this very clearly, I hope that would help. Just to close my brief remarks here, one other thing that determines our effectiveness, I think kind of touches on what some people said earlier, is the timeliness with which things are delivered. So if the politicians were to be interested, you've got to produce this in time when the politician needs it, right? So we often need more time to be perfect. And so how to be as good as you can, but also deliver in time, would be a critical piece of the puzzle. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. Ambassador Hussain, brief comments so that we can also get to the floor and try to think about 2015 concrete things you can do at your country or regional level, connecting with us at the global level.
What I think is of critical importance in building and developing partnership is to make a move in changing the mindset at all levels, at the governmental level, within the bureaucracy, and also with the politician, to make sense, not to appear that the evaluation is here to show a red card on you, but to make them truly feel comfortable that this is something that you would be able to go back to your constituency, say, this I have done. And the relationship that should be tried to build up is not an adversarial, where the evaluators are not there with a stake to say that you have not been able to deliver what you have promised to. And in doing that, I believe building partnership at the level of the common people, sending down the messages across would be very important to create that understanding of relevance of evaluation. And at 2015, of course, the challenge will certainly be much more greater, because we would have much heavier agenda to look at and to deal with, and then when this would be something a little new to the entire concept of looking development, where we relate evaluation and development together. It would be a new beginning, and certainly would be much more challenging than it would have been, because so far evaluation has been an isolated, I'm not making isolated and isolated, but as an event which was not closely linked to the targets of MDGs. But if we are going to have it built into the entire process, it will be a very difficult, and therein it would require a very, very close consultation, engagement at political level, governmental level, and at society level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Herman. Yes,
Thank
Professor
you.
Kumar. How are we going to work together at the global,
Right,
regional,
to make an
country level
impact.
in 2015? What can we do concretely?
You know, I just want to make a quick comment on the MDGs because it has come up in terms of political support, commitment, and that the report card will say we have achieved something and not achieved something. But I think fundamental to it is the problem that when you set a goal and a target, it very quickly gets reduced to a technical exercise and a technical goal. And I think we have to get out of that in the post-2015 agenda, and development evaluation can contribute in very meaningful ways. So if you take something like reduced child mortality or improved maternal health, it is not about focusing on immunization or focusing on family planning services per se, but it has to take place in the broader context of primary health care to people. At the end of 15 years, can we stand up in developing countries and say we spent 15 years in establishing community-based primary healthcare system, and that we are working towards universal health coverage? That conversation is completely missing. As was pointed out, we are so focused on a particular intervention that we forget this, and the UN is very well placed to do that dialogue. The second point I want to make, where the UN and others can make a contribution jointly, is that we are navigating without a tracking system. All the goals have little meaning in a country like India because we can't disaggregate it to the state level, we can't disaggregate it to district levels, we don't know what's happening to men and women, the different communities, castes, and so on, and there's no pressure. There's no pressure from the UN, forget about monitoring, but even the outcome goals to disaggregate and give this. I think UN Women makes an effort, UNICEF makes an effort on equity base, but we really have to come together to do this. The third one I want to say is that I think it was a point made in the previous session that UN's greatest strength is its convening capability. That it is seen as non-partisan. It's a huge number of agencies that are seen as being very fair, committed to the principles of the United Nations, to the values that are enshrined in the Millennium Declaration. And so it provides an excellent platform. But the UN by itself cannot get very critical through evaluation of the functioning of governments. So it's sort of a catch-22 over there, but the platform really is an opportunity to bring NGOs, civil society groups, evaluators, to open up the forum for discussion in a very, very non-threatening and non-judgmental manner, but being very clear, and I think that's an important role. Last 2 points, I think this issue of independence, credibility, quality, usefulness, capacity building, it's mentioned in the UNEG contribution, it is in the UNIDAP, what EVAL partners are doing. I think this is gaining momentum and we must do every effort to do it. And I want to end, this might be my last thing. I started this meeting by saying that evaluation should be embedded in the practice of democracy. And I want to end by saying democracy should be embedded in the practice of evaluation. And I really mean that because ultimately, as we all say, even if it's a cliche, it is of the people, for the people, by the people. So unless evaluators and as the evaluation community, we democratize evaluation and say we're genuinely talking about people, it is not about accountability of one donor to the other recipient. It is not about intergovernmental accountability. We have to really, as evaluators, when you talk about values and ethics, of what is it that we're trying to do, as Deborah, you said, we're accountable to people, and we must embed the practice of democracy in the practice of evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar. Yes, you get the
Thank you.
last word.
Thank
Mr.
you. Last
Hashim.
but not least.
Yes.
I think, Excellency, now you've said everything I wanted to say, so I don't have much. Well, one thing is that one of the missing parts was that for evaluators, which I think is important for the future, is a accredited qualification that is recognized uniformly across the globe, because this has been one of the issues. Because if you go back to an era where management accounting became was a new thing and was not popular many years ago, people wouldn't know what it meant. Nobody wanted to recognize them. But today it's a recognized field. So it's something like people, the awareness about evaluation and about evaluators is very little amongst the public and sometimes even among governments. So that's one of the important things. What we are looking at it is we've thought about a year. Every year we have challenges, but we are talking about 2015, right? So, okay, one of the significant things about 2015 is we have decided that it is eval year. So it's the year for evaluation. So in a sense, why not have eval year? When we have enshrined in our constitution rights, human rights, child rights, gender rights, and now in some constitutions even gay rights. So what's wrong if you have evaluation rights? So why don't we start pushing for that? How much do we push for our profession? And how have we lobbied for it? Do we lobby for a field which has tremendous contribution in today's and the future's context with limited resources coming in? It's mostly because of the lack of understanding amongst people who do not know much about evaluation. So we have an opportunity in eval year to work on making people aware about evaluation. And I think in that sense, globally, the UN would have a huge role, as it was said that the UN is acceptable as an organization that can mediate, that can play a very middle role. So globally, if there can be enough pressure to have a resolution, or as eval year as 2015, and then regionally, for regional organizations like, for example, in my region, the SAARC, the ASEAN, Africa, various regional organizations recognize 2015 as eval year and speak about it and start planning activities. And then at the national or local level, one of the things that we would envisage is for parliaments across the world to recognize the need for evaluation and to be able to speak about it and to acknowledge evaluation at the political level. So we would be able to work on those three levels, and the national evaluation networks would have to play a huge role in coordinating between the political leadership and the community of evaluators, which becomes very important. But for all this, one of the key factors will be adequate publicity, because we would have to create the awareness. So you could take this to another level. 2015, there's something that we need to do before we talk about challenges. There are challenges, but are we doing enough? So I believe that we should work towards 2015 as a key year to let the world know about the importance of evaluation. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Hashim. I want to very much get to the floor now and hear these have been wonderful, right on target comments. I know you are burning questions. So first, I will give Marco Sagoni the opportunity to speak. Introduce yourself and what role you're playing.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm Marco Sagone from UN Women. Deborah, as you said, I mean, we can repeat ourselves, so I would like just to highlight 5 key takeaway messages that I got from the panel today on how can evaluation contribute to the post-2015. So the key message number 1 is a clear awareness that evaluation is a technical process within a political environment. In the past, we as evaluation community, we very much focus on the technical process, and I think that now we are really moving towards the political environment. And that came very clearly from Kabir when he said that we really must reach out to the politicians. We should strengthen the demands for evaluation in policy making, and we should become better in communicating our evaluation results and findings to the politicians. Key message number 2, I think both from Shiv Kumar and also Thomas Winod, evaluation should be instrumental in enhancing development, but I think they made a very clear point that it should be instrumental in achieving equitable development. And I really would like to underline the equitable development. They spoke about inequities and inequalities. Now the issue for us as the evaluation community is how we are going to make sure that the evaluation systems and functions will be equity focused and gender responsive, etc. So we're not looking for the old evaluation system and functions. We are looking for a new model of evaluation that we really look at the disparities and inequalities and will highlight them so that policymakers will have this disaggregated data and information to take action and to decrease these inequities. Key message number 3 is really about innovation. I mean, Thomas Vinod was very clear on the issue of innovation. Evaluation should be an instrument to make sure that national policies can be innovative. And once again, for us as evaluation community, how are we going to make sure that our evaluation practices are going to strengthen innovation? Key message number 4 is about country-led. So no more donor-led evaluations, but it should be really the country-led evaluations. Now, how to make it in practice? I think we should learn from the South Asian Parliamentarian Forum. They have a very clear objective for 2015, and that is to, well, 2015 and beyond. And that is to have national evaluation policy in each one of the South Asian countries. National evaluation policies that are not demanded or led by the UN or by the donors, etc., but they are demanded by the parliamentarians of that countries. So that's really country-led. But I mean, we need some concrete activities, and the national evaluation policies, I think, is a very good one. Now, how to achieve all of the above? Natalia, I think she was very clear on the power of partnership. And actually, with Eval Partner, we already have a great opportunities. Eval Partner has all the regional evaluation associations, different UN agencies, some multilateral banks, private foundations, universities, government from the north and government from the south, and parliamentarians too. I mean, it's a multi-stakeholder movement that comes together really to strengthen the demand and the use for evaluation. For 2015, Eval Partner is already trying to enhance these discussions in all the different regional conferences that are already happening. Just last month, there was the conference of the African Evaluation Associations. 2015 was declared in Africa as the International Year. The Parliamentarian Forum from Africa, with a parliamentarian from Africa, was also established. So there are many things happening. And in 2015, what Eval Partner is hoping to organize is to have a global event hosted in a national parliament. So we are still discussing which country, which parliament, but that's the idea. It's really trying to reach out and to have this kind of discussion, not among the evaluation community with some politicians invited, but in a political environment with some evaluators invited. Thanks.
Thank you, Marco. Yes, Samir.
Thank you, Deborah. You have been asking whether the Eval Partners is planning some activities for the International Year of Evaluation, but I think that it's very important to keep in our mind that for the International Year of Evaluation to happen, the General Assembly must adopt the resolution. If the General Assembly will take up this issue, then of course very much will depend upon the position of the G77, which includes 132 countries plus China, and some of the countries may see, as it has been mentioned, that the evaluation is something threatening, and I think that it will be very good if the ambassadors who are present at today's panel can communicate to your colleagues in New York, and ask them to support the draft resolution and even co-sponsor the draft resolution. That will be the strongest support that we can get from this region. The international year, the GA resolutions on international years normally are adopted to raise awareness, and in this case about evaluation, the role of evaluation for accountability, learning, and evidence-based policymaking. They also serve the purpose of strengthening cooperation, and in this particular case, among the policymakers, non-governmental organization, academia, and other stakeholders. Also, they also mobilize support, international support and action. And I think it was mentioned that the UN, of course, has the convening power for policy making at the highest level. So we will count very much upon your support, both through the G77, but also individually from your delegations. If you can contact your colleagues in New York and ask them to support the General Assembly resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Samira. I actually was trying to suggest that to several of them over lunch. So essentially, you thought it was a free lunch? There is an ask. The ask is, as Samira has just put quite articulately, please take this to your capitals. Please ask them to inform your counterparts in New York that this resolution is a good thing, and that evaluation is a good thing, and that it should be at the table every year and on all projects. And the best way to get that going is the UN resolution to be signed by all member states this fall. So that's my ask for the free lunch today. Other questions? Yes.
Thank you very much, Deborah, and thank you for putting together this absolutely fantastic event. What I find particularly interesting is the fact that we have excellencies, the ambassadors of Bangladesh, Pakistan, Bhutan represented here, which makes it so interesting to see the user dimension, if you like, from a very different perspective here, and that the organizers need to be complimented. I would also certainly like to thank Marco for the comments that were made just earlier. But one of the things that we are looking at, and I think 2015 is an important year to do that, is really about looking at evaluation in a very different way from what we have looked at so far. I mean, evaluation has so far been a very ex-post activity, and there is a lot of discussion about how we can have quick, real-time evaluations that can feed into the development processes and make our development lessons much more relevant. I think Vinod pointed out to the fact that some of those lessons are not even that relevant for how we are looking at the future. So how do we transform our tools and instruments to be able to do that is something that as a group, as a community, we'd like to think about, and to encourage this whole group to work on that. So that is my question to this eminent panel as to what is it that we'll be trying to do in order to make that development agenda responsive as we go along, and not look at it at the end of the period in retrospect and find that the lessons are then not that useful as we might have liked them to be. So that's the question. The reflection is very much taking on board what Professor Shiva Kumar was talking about, and that is about being able to draw in a large number of stakeholders, much more than we've been able to do so far. I mean, the demographics of this region, for example, point to a huge youth bulge. And how do we bring that group of people so that the questions of the right to information, the transparency, their engagement in this whole process, and how evaluation can help with that. That, similarly, the engagement of women as a group that actually needs to be able to utilize the evaluation results in a way that we can help to make them much more engaged in the process of development results, and how the evaluations can help us to support that process. I did forget to introduce myself at the beginning. My name is Deepa. I head the Knowledge, Innovation and Capacity Group at the UNDP Regional Center here. Thank you very much.
Deepa, excellent, excellent points. Other questions, comments?
Thank you. I'm Jo Puri from the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation. So I have one response, which is actually for Deborah and for Mr. Vinod Thomas, which is on your call for evaluations of peace-building initiatives and of initiatives that are looking at preventive action as well as emergency action undertaken immediately after natural disasters. And what I wanted to highlight to both of you is that there actually are quite a few initiatives, and especially impact evaluation initiatives, that we are building with, for example, the World Bank and DFID and USAID, and I'd be very happy to talk to you after this forum offline about them, which are looking at the extent of good, high-quality evaluations that have been done in this field, but also at the evidence gap that there is, as well as the need for it. So yes, please feel free to talk to me. But my question is also to the two representatives of the people sitting on this panel. I hope there are more, but that's Kabir and His Excellency the Ambassador. You know, while you were talking, I actually tweeted your comments. So, and I used, for those who want to tweet, the handle here is UN_evaluation. And I put out one of your comments, Kabir, which said, why are politicians not invited to evaluation meetings? And I think it was echoed by the ambassador as well. And one of the responses that I got back was, what happens when we invite them and they don't show up? Yeah. And of course, so now there's a dialogue going on. But I think what I'd like to do is also provoke you to think a little bit more and perhaps provide a few more of your perspectives on how we can engage with politicians and bureaucrats who are really in a decision-making position to then take forward some of the evaluations that are brought into our fold. But also, perhaps provoke Professor Shivakumar to comment a little bit more on his call for a greater democratization of evaluations. And I'm afraid I want to take sort of the other side of it, emphasizing much more the merit that's required in evaluations and not so much that democratization, because I think at least the conversations that I've had with bureaucrats and with politicians is much more about the credibility of evaluations and the quality of evaluations, and then sort of decrying the quality of these reports rather than the usability of them. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
I'm Krishna Belvase from UNEG. One additional message that we can take away from this very unique event is that evaluators also need to think and communicate somewhat differently and innovatively. I've been watching, I think that's one thing that we must note, Deborah and other colleagues. The idea of national accountability framework in India, Professor Shivakumar, I think you mentioned that in passing, but how is that evolving? Is it something about an accountability framework where evaluation can be fitted in? Is there any potential that can be pursued as something that can be mainstreamed as part of the post-2015 accountability and evaluation agenda? Thank you.
One quick one.
My question is for all panelists that do you think, is it a challenge to institutionalize all these actors into one group of people who can meet on regular basis, yearly or 2-year basis to do the evaluation? Do you think these actors which are mentioned in our question can get together, sit down and process the evaluation without any hindrance from their institutions, the respective institutions? I mean, can we institutionalize a sub-institution of these actors? Thank you.
Okay, panel, who would like to go first? Vinod? And then Professor Kumar, maybe
Thank
second.
you very much. Again, this is such a rich array of questions. The colleagues will probably touch on those ones that I certainly won't take them comprehensively. But I thought a quick comment to Deepa, who asked about how to upgrade or innovate evaluation to be relevant enough in the post-2015 era. I think we have to keep in mind the SAGE counsel about keeping it simple as well, especially the messaging. But that said, I think that's a very important question, because a lack of relevance, whether it's the operational people saying that this doesn't take into account the dynamic changes we made halfway through a program, you're still evaluating the old way, or the policymakers or the politicians saying the agenda is moving on, or I need the answer by next week, you're still coming back too late. I've got 5 very quick thoughts. One is, I think, the real-time evaluation, and we don't have time to go into it, but with all the rigor, really seem to touch a spot when it's done well. That means as a program is unfolding, don't wait for the 5 years later for the whole thing to close, but halfway through, with all your humility and qualifications, give a sense of how it is going and talk about midterm corrections and changes. We have done a few of those, some very successful, some not so. And so that, I think, would be one way to stay abreast of changes. Second, I think what Deborah said at the beginning, quite often asking the right questions take us some distance, even if you don't have all the answers. So it puts the results in a better context than if you didn't even put the questions as important. Third would be to triangulate even better. I think we have different skills, different disciplines, and I think it was said that many people are relevant. I think evaluators, if as a discipline have certain skills, it doesn't mean they necessarily would be the experts on the political economy, but I think involving some of the lessons from the other areas and triangulating better would help. And then third, and the fourth would be the stakeholder story. This, I think, is highly doable, although sometimes people don't show up when invited. That the question was a good one. What does it take to get them on inside? So including the stakeholders, even if you don't have the right answers at the end of the day for all the questions, makes us more relevant. And then the fifth one, I mean, this I've thought for some time, but when Professor Shiva Kumar mentioned it, it even sounds good. That is, democratized evaluation. At the end of the day, the evaluation techniques, all the ones that you apply, comes down to what beneficiaries really think, aside from interest groups and aside from political things, what they really think about the success of or effectiveness of a program. That is including a larger group in telling us about the effectiveness of a program. And that can be made more scientific, if you will, or more rigorous as a tool for evaluation. At the end of the day, that would be the best way to get at it. So I think bringing that would be one. Let me just, I may not have a chance to say anything more. One announcement, we have an evaluation week at the Asian Development Bank in September. You're all invited, so please let us know. And this is also a small piece into the building up for 2015. We will also have a book at that time on the 10 years of evaluation at the ADB. So please consider yourself invited. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinod. Professor Kumar.
Thank you. When I talk about accountability of the evaluators and evaluation community to people, what I'm trying to actually say is that we have to have an articulated vision of what kind of society we want. I'll give you an example. A very popular thing in India is to do conditional cash transfers to promote the dignity of women. So they say if you do A, B, C, D, we'll give you 1,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, and at the end of 15 years or 20 years, you'll get this money. Now, you can evaluate a scheme like that in terms of whatever way you want to do, but can you really fundamentally ask, is that the right means to do it? Is that the way we really want to? Will that cash transfer bring about transformational changes in the way society looks at women? Is it going to alter the power relations within the household between men and women? Is it going to make any dent on the patriarchy that Indian society is characterized by? So I think the accountability to people has to go beyond, when I say democratize, you have to have a conversation. It is governance by discussion, by debate. And this has to contribute to that, and that's what I meant. Yes, policymakers lament about the credibility and usefulness because they are not looking at evaluation in terms of what it is doing to society. And I think we owe it to people with whom we are, on whom we are experimenting, if I can use that word, in terms of interventions, how to make their lives better. But fundamentally asking, is that really happening? And that's what I meant. And where does the obligation of the evaluators stop? You do a fantastic technical sampling thing, you do the survey, you present the report, and you have a conversation with the policy maker. Is that our obligation stop, or do we have a little more? You say that, yes, we are accountable to people, we'll go back, we'll share the results with them, ask them what they think about it, and that's the spirit with which I was talking about democratization. On the institutions, the framework of accountability and institutions, I think over the next few years, if we have a common goal, I think many countries in this region are going to come up with these independent evaluation organizations. After a lot of teething problems, India has just announced one almost after 5 years of an independent evaluation organization. But what is this organization going to do? Do you need just one for India? Or do you need one in every province or every state? Where is this heading? And I think as a community where we are looking at regional capacity, bringing together ambassadors and others from different countries, we have to all pitch in together and say over the next 3 years or 5 years, a good goal of the evaluation goal would be to have fantastic, strong, credible, independent evaluation organizations at the national level and at the provincial level. I want to pose another challenge to evaluators. Do you have a blueprint for this capacity building? We keep talking about capacity building. We'll always say that there's no capacity at the district levels and the block level. So what are we really talking about decentralizing evaluation, about really, as a group, as the UN and all our partners together, do we have a blueprint for ensuring that these independent evaluation organizations become credible institutions that promote the practice of evaluation?
Responding to a few questions, Joe's thing about tweeting and the reply, I think, well, you're not going to find it easy to get parliamentarians to come and participate in evaluation conferences or be engaged. Because, like I told you, for the last 15, 20 years, you have not engaged them. You've left them out. And they're not going to come so easy. And I'm here. It's not going to help me in my political career in any way. But this is the sacrifice I am making because I believe in this. I think it's right. And there are many like this all over the world, politicians. So you need to identify people. And as I heard Shiv saying, as evaluators, you got to do something. Are you doing your part? Are you engaging them? Now, for so many years, there's been an evaluation association in my country. Sri Lanka adopted a draft national evaluation policy in 1999. Now it's 2014, we still don't have it in place. Now we, as a parliamentary forum, have decided to take it up. And we have decided to lobby it. So we think that we should do our part. We've done quite a bit from the parliamentary forum right now. We've done a mapping exercise. We've of what countries in the global scenario have national evaluation policies. We are doing a South Asian regional consultation amongst the 9 countries to see what it takes to establish a national evaluation policy in our countries and how we would have to lobby, what kind of technical expertise we would need for this. We're also looking for advocacy support for the country teams through various sources. So now this is politicians working on it. So I believe that if you keep working on it, as evaluators, if you reach out, you will have their participation. My other question to you is, have you really tried to see whether you, in engaging the reports that you have, the evaluation reports, as evaluators, haven't we failed to really make an impact on the users? One is the policymakers, other is general public. We don't get our message across to the general public or to the policymakers. The report goes into a shelf. In that, I would like to just give a reminder about what Imran did in South Africa, where they had a scorecard system and where the public were engaged in evaluation. So those are key issues. that you need to look inwardly and say, okay, how do we get other stakeholders to come in? And His Excellency asked a question, how do we get all stakeholders together? Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. One of the things we're trying to do is to make sure that our national evaluation organizations in our countries will have a representative from Parliament in all their meetings on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, so that they will start engaging on a regular basis and share information and knowledge. So like that, if you start setting the system, you can have all the stakeholders together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One last comment?
I also wanted to know that evaluation is a very big and dynamically developing profession, and I would really like to alert you about, I think, a very interesting trend in evaluation, which says that you don't have to wait till the end of the program to evaluate, and maybe you don't even need to wait till the middle of the program. There's some research that tells you that, like, when you're 15% spent on the resources, you already can learn a lot about your program. It's really saying that you should evaluate as the program goes and support the development of the program. And I guess this is probably the way we are going, and that's probably how we can become more useful as evaluation profession.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we need to move towards wrapping up. And so I would take these as your last comments and have the opportunity, if someone has not yet made their last comments, to give you that opportunity. Yes?
No, thank you. I think this has been an excellent opportunity and experience for us non-practitioners. One lesson that I perhaps will take from here, and perhaps an advice that I can prefer, if I may say so, after 2.5 hours or so, is there has to be an effort to make evaluation relevant at a country level, and that the countries must take the ownership and understand the value of it. And unless and until that advocacy, that effort is taken, no amount of conferences will make the difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I really, this is an incredibly rich, I hope you all found exciting, interesting conversation. There's no way to sum up everything, but I will make some summary of the things I've heard just to reiterate them again, because I do believe in repetition. I know I say the same thing over and over and over, and sometimes I don't remember it, but so I would like to, what's risen to the surface for me, restate some of that for us, and then let us go on to the reception where we can have over a glass of wine further real frank conversations with our panelists and among all of you. So for me, I heard a number of things. Thanks to Marco for already doing part of my job here with the 5 key messages from the panel. But here's the things that I found particularly important coming out. First of all, simplicity. We're not going to get very far without the ability to be simple, and not too simple, but simple enough. I think Einstein also had a statement about it should be as simple as possible, but no simpler. And we've forgotten maybe a long time ago about parsimony. I know I learned about parsimony when I learned about research methodologies, and then went on into the world, and we seem to forget about parsimony and being simple enough, but no simpler. So in being simple, it takes us right into this last comment about politicians. I worked with the U.S. government for 20 years. I worked with the U.S. Congress for 20 years, and I worked fighting the AIDS epidemic in the U.S. Highly political, highly engaged. I was at the CDC. We were an evidence-based agency, and we definitely had to learn the hard way how to get simple, because our messages were profoundly complex and speaking to epidemiologists, and we needed to translate. And after many findings and frustrations when we were doing the adolescent sex and age education and getting political decisions that said there would be no sex and age education in the U.S. schools if it didn't promote an abstinence-only message, after all of the research and meta-analysis showed that that was absolutely the wrong way to go, and that there were no untoward effects from sex and age education in school, our U.S. Congress said, well, we don't care. It's a values issue, and there will be an abstinence-only approach. So that kind of frustration about all the evidence in the world, not making a difference with politicians is where my passion grows for this issue. So I had opportunities to sit down with the congressmen, but especially their assistants and the staffers who surround politicians to have the frank conversations. They gave me 3 or 4 valuable lessons I want to share with you that are really hold sway and hold to this day. It's got to be simple. They don't understand complex 50-page studies with all sorts of qualifications and interaction variables and conclusions only true for a subset of the population under these conditions, et cetera, the way we present evaluation results. We need a simple message. And most politicians have a 3-minute attention span, present company excluded, of course, but you've got to be able to say it in 3 minutes or 10 minutes. And certainly in the social media age, it's phrases, it's hashtags. That doesn't get the whole complexity across, but it's a skill we have to acquire if we want to be at the table, and we do want to be at the table. So it has to be simple, it has to be said really clearly that any politician could understand, and I use taxi drivers as my barometer on that, because I find taxi drivers and politicians, that somehow they understand things the same way. That's met with the most fondest feelings for both professionals. It's got to be salient. It's got to be responsive and timely. Don't tell me about the results of a water cleanliness program when right now we're legislating about the reproductive rights of women. Give me information now about what we're legislating about now. Evaluation is often not timely, and I've had several directors over the years and policymakers say, that's all well and good, Deborah, but I needed that information 18 months ago. And the frustration I have with evaluators, you're never on the same timeline I'm on. If I say I want it by the end of the week, you say the end of the month. If I say I can get it at the end of the month, you say the end of the year. If I say the end of the year, you say I need a 3-year study. We have to figure out ways to operate activities in parallel so that we're prepared to give information by the end of the day, by the end of the week, by the end of the month, and yes, by the end of the year or the 3 years to do the proper study. We have to be prepared if we want to engage with politicians to be on their timetable, because they have no control over the timetable. It's dynamic, it's rapid. If we want our information to play, it's got to play when they're legislating, discussing these issues. So it's got to be salient to the time. Third, it's got to be compelling. Providing information about a 1% change or 2% here or small subgroups and we found 6%. We need compelling information. Talk to me about half the people in my district, half the people in the country, all of the 16-year-old girls in this neighborhood. Give me compelling information that I can work with. Politics are about compelling information that the public cares about. So evaluation has to find the pieces that it has to be more compelling. It's got to be simple, salient, and compelling. And then they said the truth be known, to make it actually work smoothly, it has to be consistent with the prevailing values and attitudes of our constituencies. Politicians represent people. That's constituents. That's what politics is. What they legislate about, act on, are things that the people, ideally, optimally, are the things that the people in their community, jurisdiction, states, and nations care about. So if you're providing evaluation evidence that's in sync with what people care about, it's going to be used. And if it's answering a question that they're being put on the spot to answer themselves and you give information at the time they need it, they're going to use it. And if it's a question that they've been asking themselves all along, when you give them the information, they're going to use it. So I think these things held for me in the US work and then the international AIDS work, and I think they generalize to many of the situations we're working on today and in the development arena. The other thing that I saw coming up here that's really important, in addition to getting at the table with politicians and politicians to respond to what evaluation does, it's the phrase, and I'd love to see this phrase live on its evaluation rights. So we have human rights, we have gender rights, and the UN is nothing if it isn't about the rights to make people's lives better. We believe that evaluation can provide as a tool to help make people's lives better. Therefore, it should be a right. And it is something that we could work together in the UN, in countries, in governments to see this as something that is a right for the people. And I found it interesting after 30 years in the public health arena and fighting AIDS, where it was really clear, it was a given that if you were going to receive a medical intervention, you had a right to know its efficacy, that we would only deliver interventions that had proven efficacy and effectiveness. We were doing male circumcision studies. People needed to know that worked, and it had to be evaluated, and evidence had to be known and made public. But when we move out of the health arena, as I move into the broader development social arena, it's surprising to me that the concept's absent. That people don't say, what's the efficacy of this intervention that the program's doing? What can UNDP tell us the efficacy of this intervention that you're delivering in the program? And importantly, that people have a right to know. And I think it's that fundamental understanding that you have a right to know as a citizen. And I often say what people in power know is that information is actually power, and you have the right to that information. And the best way to get it is to see that evaluation is done. And even better is that you've convened it, you own it, you manage it, and you use it. You have the right to evaluation. So for me, monitoring and evaluation, now that we've got both the monitoring on the table and doing a little bit better on the evaluation on the table, M&E has come to mean motivation and empowerment. And I think this links together a lot of the comments that we've seen today. But to get there, we also need innovation, and we heard that come up. That was an important point for me. I think we need to spend at least 10% of our time, all of us every day, outside our comfort zone. That's stretching what we do into some additional area, and that's how we're going to get the synergies to solve the problems that we're facing now. Because old solutions haven't worked. Looking back is good to know what worked and failed in the past, but we've got to think of the future. And those who can move beyond their comfort zone, think outside the box, be open to innovation, blend across disciplines and levels, are the people and the activities that are going to come up with the solutions to make 2015 and beyond a much more effective activity, and allow evaluations to show what is and isn't working and feed that back in to actually help get programs to work better. So there's a number of smaller findings, I think, from this session that we'll put into the notes that we'll ask about over the discussion at the reception and all this week. But I think those for me are the main motivating, empowering calls to action for all of us, no matter where we sit or what kind of job we do. But it's all around the utility of evaluation and the future. So I want to end there and thank you very much. Incredibly, this panel has been very frank, very forthright, put a lot of effort here. You've been listening for 2.5 hours and providing some additional insights on the direction to go. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please come to the reception now and let us have a little more time to relax and think about this further. I hope that there's thoughts now that are going to bubble over time, and it may be tonight or tomorrow or next week, where something we said today is going to crystallize for you to provide opportunities for the future. So I want to thank all of our distinguished guests, our ambassadors, our evaluation colleagues, our hosts, UN colleagues, community members. Thank you so much, and join me now in a reception back in the cafeteria area. There'll be a place set up for drinks and snacks and us to have some informal time together. Please join me in thanking our panelists.